splendid good afternoon to you, dear televiewers of High Television, and welcome on board the program Nature's Corner with me, Jabi Kitty. It's a pleasure to have your company every Thursday from 3 p.m. whenever we come here to talk about issues related to nature, environment, and wildlife. Thankfully, the rain has given us a way, has given us a small freedom this Thursday to go about our activities. It has been rainy all through. This is what we call the August rain. Of course, it is in its season, but in as much as it is raining in Cameroon and giving us maybe some small freedom, in other parts of the world it is raining cats and dogs, and not just that, it is causing several disasters, floods, landslides, and people have been killed. Hundreds of persons have been killed, and properties have been destroyed, houses, roads, farmlands. People have lost agricultural products, all to the disasters during this rainy season, of which some experts say it is aggravated by climate change. And while we're here in Cameroon having this small freedom, I'll urge you to take a cup of tea, cup of coffee to warm up yourself. Put on some pullovers to keep warm to avoid any health issues during this rainy season. And today on the program Nature's Corner, we shall be discussing about some of these global disasters that have plagued the world at large, and what is causing them, what consequences do they bring, and what solutions can we put forward to fight some of these issues. Because remember, in as much as they may not be happening in Cameroon right now, it does not mean that we are exempted. You know, the world is very unpredictable, and just last year during this same period, we had our own share of the ordeal, wherein we had landslides and floods in Limbe. Many persons were killed, more than 20. We can still remember the Boyatown incident of 18 March 2023. We can still remember that of Bankolo, wherein persons were killed, and the yearly or annual flooding situations in Douala. My name is Jabi Katie. I am your program presenter for today's program program Nature's Corner. We'll take on this jingle break. When we come back, we give you details about some of the disasters that have plagued the world, that have gripped some countries across the globe, and of course, we also unveil our guest for today. Do not go anywhere. Welcome back. It's a pleasure to have your company on today's edition of the program Nature's Corner, right here on the airwaves of High Television. My name is Jabi Kitty, your presenter, and as I earlier reiterated before going on that jingle break, there has been a couple of disasters which has gripped some countries on the globe. Let's start first with Bangladesh, wherein more than 3 million persons have been left stranded and displaced due to monsoon rains, wherein 3 million persons have been displaced, and two persons have died from these flooding situations due to rains and flooding. And of course, the floods have submerged vast areas and damaged homes, infrastructures, as officials from the country's disasters management ministry said today, Thursday. And reports from Bangladesh residents shows people evacuating their belongings by boat and other makeshift transportation as knee-deep water entered their homes, which means water which could be even surpass their knee levels. The Flood Forecasting and Warning Center has warned that with the rains continuing, water levels could rise further over the next 24 hours, raising concern about additional flooding and displacement. Road connectivity in several regions have been severed, isolating communities and hampering relief efforts, as reported by disaster management officials in that area. The most affected districts in Bangladesh include Feni, Moibaza, and a host of other cities over there in the country. We could move from Bangladesh to Spain, wherein in that part of the globe it is not flooding but it is drought, while other countries are facing flooding situations. In Spain, it is serious and severe drought which is causing water problems and is limiting access to potable water. over there in Spain. A severe drought has rendered tap water undrinkable in several towns along Spain's Costa Blanca, forcing holidaymakers and locals to queue at distribution points to conserve water, as government officials revealed on Wednesday. Flooding, which is often fatal, is common in Indian cities as every monsoon has a rapid urbanization devours the cities, lakes, and waste-clogged drains. And speaking about flooding and landslide, in India, we look back to a situation, a landslide in India, which killed several persons. Last week or last 2 weeks per se, tragic landslides hit southern India, killing over 50 persons, with many more missing. At press time, Kerala, India tragedy struck southern India on some weeks back on a Tuesday morning, as landslides claimed over 50 lives, with many persons are reported missing. Authorities in Kerala state confirmed that the heavy rains triggered the collapse of hillsides, sending rivers of mud, water, and boulders crashing into the homes of workers and villagers. And of course, rescue efforts were put in, and about 250 persons were saved. Meantime, significant material damage was also recorded, including the collapse of a bridge, destruction of numerous homes, and severe damage to the tea estate, which is the lifeline for many villagers. And this disaster in Kerala brings back painful memories of the 2018 floods in the state that killed nearly 400 people. And it is against this backdrop and many other flooding situations in India that the government has budgeted over $300 million to spend in order to adapt to disasters and climate-induced events. Now, in Africa, we've also had a pinch of the salt when it concerns flooding situations, as over 229 persons died in Ethiopia following mudslides and heavy rains. Scientists described it as the deadliest disaster in Ethiopia's history. Some of the victims of the disaster, which occurred on Monday, July 22, included children, pregnant women, and rescuers. And away from Ethiopia, in Vietnam, flood and landslide killed 10 persons, with 9 missing. And of course, about 30,000 hectares of rice was destroyed, which is a source of income for many inhabitants. And in China, landslides from Typhoon Giami kills 12 people. And those are some of the disasters or the events, climate-induced events that we recorded over the past 2 weeks, from July right up to August right now. And we are wondering, asking the questions, what is happening? It's not like rain has not been falling for previous years, but why is it so escalated this season? And we have an expert in the house to tell us more about this particular situation. We meet him when we take on this jingle break. When we come back, we meet our climate change expert. John the Baptist in the Bible said, "The man I'm about to introduce to you, I'm not sure I'm able to untie his shoelace." He was referring to Jesus. But I guess I may use that same allusion in today's edition of the program Nature's Corner, because the man I'm about to introduce to you right now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not so sure I can untie his shoelace. He's a man of caliber and timber, and the right person to talk about climate change, as he has had years of studies in environmental studies from the University of Boya, which he has backed several degrees from environmental studies. He is the founder, or one of the co-founders of the NGO Qua for Change Solutions, which is focused on solving some natural predicaments like climate change. He has also been a Mandela Washington Fellow, that is right, and of course he has been attributed to several great activities and projects here in Cameroon. He is a climate change activist and expert. I'm talking about the one and only Mr. Kembethek Henry Kwa. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Henry.
Good afternoon, Jabi. It's always a pleasure for me to be part of this very important TV program, which High TV is using to, to raise the critical consciousness of people about the changing climate. Indeed, from the news you just read, it shows that truly there's a trend, an increasing trend in both the frequency and intensity of disasters which we are experiencing in the world, and this is because of climate change.
Yeah, later how climate change contributes to these disasters.
Yeah.
This is about the third time we're having you on the program, Mr. Henry. It's such
Yeah.
a pleasure that you take out time to come sensitize the public about some of the environmental problems we're facing, including climate change. So far, since the last time we spoke, what is your assessment of Cameroon's reaction to adaptation to climate change? And so far, have we even had serious disasters this year?
Well, thank God. Actually, we've not heard of any major disasters, but I think the Minister of Health, what's his name again?
Dr. Manauda Malachi.
Malachi, yeah. I think he warned the public about the increasing heat. So that is just one of the things that we were concerned about. But for now, like the floodings we've been having, we yet to have it, but the way rain is kind of the trend of rain right now, I think is already creating fear that something can happen. So we must be alert.
Of course, we must be on alert, and we are hoping that such disasters do not happen to us in Cameroon. Just to rekindle your memories, last year, 18 March 2023, in the Boyatown environment, we witnessed flash floods in which 2 persons were killed and many others injured and displaced, properties damaged. And just a few months later, or a few days later, a little boy was killed in, a little boy died around Great Sopor Boya, due to heavy rains, and he was carried away by the heavy rains. A few days later, another girl was discovered in the gutter, and just when we were trying to clean our eyes from these disasters, the one of Bankoro happened. Then we have the yearly disasters in Douala. But this time, Mr. Henry, God seems to be smiling on Cameroon so far, but not so much in some other countries. Kenya has had a big blow. We've had bridges destroyed, farmlands destroyed, persons dying in Kenya. The same thing for Ethiopia, China, Vietnam, Russia, India. Most of these countries, as we read in the news, they are suffering from flooding situations, landslides, typhoons. How you say climate change contributes to these situations, but how does climate change contribute to the frequency and aggravate
Climate change. This is because most of these disasters are weather related, which shows that climate change is affecting the way the way the climate operates, the way weather conditions, temperature, rain, and all these factors interact. So it directly causes. Let's look at, for instance, flood. Flood is directly a weather related disaster. For instance, most of the times, as sometimes the sun becomes intense, more water is being evaporated in the atmosphere, and over a long time they are converted into very intensive rainfalls. So you see how climate change now, through the increase in temperature and maybe sun intensity, is directly linking to flooding. Also look at you talk of let's take an example like another like storms. Storms, year of typhoon, and all these things. These are directly linked to weather conditions. So climate change is solely responsible for the increasing intensity and frequency of these disasters which we are experiencing.
Okay, you've explained how climate change intensifies these disasters and make them even much more rampant. Now, to the viewers who may be out there wondering, but what is causing this climate change? What are some of the things that happen on Earth that is promoting or propagating this climate change, that is in turn promoting these disasters?
Okay, man has been promotes climate change. One, we'll talk about releasing of greenhouse gas into the atmosphere, through deforestation. Because one of the reasons why climate is changing is because of the increasing greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And man is solely responsible for this increase in the number of greenhouse gases that we have in the atmosphere. How are we doing it? Deforestation. We used to have our natural forests that regulate the climate, but as our population is increasing, we are cutting down more trees, and much of the carbon which is stored in these trees are being released into the atmosphere. And at the same time, these trees are responsible for absorbing more carbon from the atmosphere. So when these trees are not, it's having a kind of a double effect on climate change. The trees are not there to mitigate the climate, and by cutting down these trees, we are releasing more carbon again into the atmosphere. We also talk about transportation. Through transport, we are also releasing more of the carbon and the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. You see a lot of waste into our environments right now. As we pile this waste, they release more methane into the atmosphere. So man is solely responsible for climate change, and we have to act to be able to mitigate climate change. If not, all the disasters that we are experiencing, you just read about all the disaster updates, we will continue to suffer from these disasters. So we have to start taking actions to not just to mitigate the climate change, but we also take actions to be able to adapt so that casualties will be reduced.
Mr. Henry, speaking of adapting to climate change, we have heard of these situations and disasters across the globe. Fortunately, we've not had one in Cameroon, but it is so unpredictable, and given the record that Cameroon has, we fear that another one may happen again in Cameroon.
Yeah.
So if it does happen, not saying it will happen, but if it does happen, how do Cameroonians adapt to these situations?
Okay, first we are yet to have those kind of structures here in Cameroon. If you look at the last flooding that occurred in Boya, you see how people were screaming left and right. There was no government.
Chaos.
There was no government institution like a team like that was there to rescue the situation. So our government must put in place some of those structures that are available to rescue people in time of disaster. That's one of the ways we want to adapt, and be able to reduce the damage or the human loss that may occur in terms of disasters. Then our planning. We need to work in our planning. Most of our cities are just expanding on their own without no proper planning. People are settling on very dangerous places where when there is flooding, the houses are vulnerable.
I think it's just like the case of Boya Town, where in one of the causes of the flood, as scientists opined that it was because people had built on waterways, obstructing the path through which water was supposed to flow.
Yes, that's perfect. So poverty, we have to work to ameliorate poverty. If you look at the number of people who go to settle in these river valleys and maybe on slopes, these are very poor people who don't have the money to be able to afford land in very safe and maybe planned areas. So these poor people move to these most vulnerable places, and when they occur, they die. So we must work on our planning, making sure that people don't settle in those most dangerous places. We work on alleviating poverty. As more people are poor, they don't have the finance to be able to even adapt to this changing climate.
You try to move to a different settlement, they ask you, where do I
There's
get
no
the money?
option. There are no options. So we have to work on alleviating poverty. Like I talk about the government putting in place institutions that are available to rescue people. I know sometimes the army do intervene, but I think it should not be that when something happens, the armies go, but there should be a specific group, team that's ready for emergency situations like that, which are trained to be able to handle some of those things. I think it's going to help us mitigate and reduce the casualties that occur from these natural disasters.
Now, away from the government and authorities to the locals, the inhabitants, if to say, God forbid, but if to say a disaster happens at such immediately, like maybe right now in Boya, what should be the immediate actions or first aid actions that the inhabitants should take in to adapt to that to adapt immediately to the situation?
Okay. Yes, actually, in terms of like flooding, normally when rain starts falling and we predict that the incidence of maybe the water becoming more intense, like the one we had last year, people should start thinking of moving away from those areas. they should not bother much about properties, because sometimes you see people are focused on trying to jack their properties,
I
and
want to move my
people
chair.
end up dying in the process. So please save your head first before
Okay.
properties. People should leave those environments, go save their head first before they can come back for their properties. Then people should also be very conscious about the media. Sometimes these things happen and the media is talking about it.
Yeah.
Those in this area should find a way to leave the community. So we must be conscious to stay up to date, especially at this period where the rain is increasing.
Yeah.
People should be alert. First thing is being conscious that, okay, we are living in this dangerous community. This kind of disaster can happen. Let's start being conscious about it. I think it's going to help people stay safe from this kind of disasters.
Okay, what about, take for instance the case wherein we had the flooding situations, wherein water came in excessively. In such situations, like we had cases of people maybe trying to save other people, people trying to go hectare scatter. Like if overflowing water comes in now, how should maybe inhabitants around the area immediately, maybe what should they do?
Like we just said, flee away. Last year we saw people struggling to videotape, and when water was coming, and some of them end up being carried away by this water. So find a way to flee away from those environments. That's the first thing. Maybe have children, take children away, flee away from the environment, and stay safe before you think about properties.
All right, thank you very much, Mr.
And if you have a way to inform other people, inform them that
Spread
this
the
is something
message.
that's happened, spread the news. Spread the news.
Yeah, I think when the floods were on in Limbe, I think there was this kind of trend on Facebook. I am safe from the Limbe. I'm safe from the floods. What about you? Things like that. Just to inform family members that we are safe, and to inform the other people that are outside. Okay, I think like the one in Mutengene, do not come to Mutengene Hill at this point. Where landslides have occupied the roads, you stand the leaks. I think that makes a lot of sense to spread the message and inform people of the disasters when they do happen, to prevent many people from being hurt. Ladies and gentlemen, you're still on to the program Nature's Corner right here over High Television, and I am your presenter Jabi Kitty, and we're speaking about global disasters, the climate crisis, as of how many persons have died in countries as Ethiopia and a whole host of other countries. And we're asking the question, what is happening and what is contributing to the frequency of this event, and how we can solve the problems, and of course relating it to the Cameroonian context. We have Henry Kembefenkwa, Mr. Henry, who has been here with us since 3 p.m. talking to us and educating you. Of course, we still have more to talk about. Let's take on a jingle break. When we come back, we discuss more about the solutions on how to fight this climate change. Why do we have to adapt to it if we can probably fight and put an end to it once and for all? Former President of the United States of America, Barack Obama, once said, "We are the first generation to feel the impact of climate change, and we may be the last generation to do something about it, because it may escalate to even higher or even worse situations." And this brings the question, just before we get to the solutions, Mr. Henry, we are already witnessing this kind of disasters, in which, take for instance the one that happened, I think about last 2 weeks in Ethiopia. 200 persons died within the space of 2-3 days. With such situations and trends that we are witnessing across the globe, what should we expect in the years to come? Will this trend continue? Will the situations be even more terrible and horrific?
Yeah, there are predictions that disasters would continue to increase, not just in frequency, but in terms of intensity. So we must be prepared for it. We have to be prepared for it, and people must find governments, and both the government and the community must work together to be able to find ways to rather mitigate the damage that comes with these disasters.
Than just adapting to it.
Yes, just adapting to it, because the trend is going to increase. If we don't want the trend to increase, then we must find a way to solve climate change very urgent. Yeah, so the trend would increase.
Speaking about ways to solve climate change, very urgent. Speaking to the population out there, we don't have these disasters in Cameroon this year, but we had them last year. And with the report of these trends even increasing in intensity and frequency, which means Cameroon may just be on the map one day. What can we do as a people, starting first as a people, to solve this climate change? What are some of the things that we inhabitants can contribute and put efforts towards to ensure that we fight climate change?
Okay, thank you very much. To solve climate change, one of the solution to solve climate change is that we must find a way to stop the emission of carbon dioxide, most of these greenhouse gases, into the atmosphere, and we must also find a way to absorb the already existing greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So, but there is no technology that can just do this immediately. But we are so lucky that the forest is one of the natural solutions that is going to help the world to absorb more carbon from the atmosphere. So in this case, we must preserve our forests.
Do not cut them.
Everybody must contribute in finding ways so that we can protect our forest. Even when there is forest, even it reduces the ability of flooding the intensity of flooding in the country.
Just to reference what happened, I'll keep referencing the Boyatown incident last year, wherein scientists said the intensity of the flood was that high because most of the trees around the Mount Cameroon had been cut. That's why when it came back, it came with so much force.
Yeah, most of the trees around the mountain have been cut down, and most of these the soils in the mountain are volcanic soils. And so when they are exposed, they absorb more water, they become loose, and it is very easy for small runoff to carry a large amount of this mud down hills. And when water comes along with mud, that becomes very destructive.
Okay.
Yeah. So we must work on preserving our forests. It's for our own good. Secondly, let's look at transitions in the energy sector.
Mr. Harry, not to cut you short, because when you speak about forest, people may think that maybe it's just around the forest areas. I mean, even within within our communities where we build houses, maybe it can be a culture that as we build houses, we plant 1 or 2 trees beside our compounds.
Yes, very perfect. We must make sure our cities are green. We make sure we preserve more trees. Those empty spaces where we're not using them, we'll make sure that we preserve the trees there. I think ASQA has been doing a lot of effort trying to plant trees along the street. That is very good initiative, which I must applaud about ASQA. So we should also work on our energy transition. We are asking, the world is actually trying to find solutions in making sure that we don't longer use all the energy sources that we use should be more sustainable. Like for instance, investing more in maybe building dams, investing more in building maybe solar energy, tapping more energy from the sun. And now these are sustainable energy sources that have limited impact on the climate change. Yes. Minimize the use of more of fossil fuel. So those are some of the reasons. Find creative ways to ameliorate the carbon that is released through our transportation. Walk short distances to reduce the release of more carbon through transportation.
Mr. Henry, let's talk about the soil agriculture, because we understand that agriculture is one of the major factors that contribute towards climate change.
Okay.
And we in Cameroon and Africa at large, we are an agricultural society. We depend mostly on agriculture.
Yeah.
And what are some of the things that we can do agricultural-wise to also help prevent or mitigate climate change. I believe you've been working in that field for quite a while with your regenerative agricultural activities. Maybe you can be in a better position to shed more light on that.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, agriculture actually contribute about 14% of the greenhouse gas into the atmosphere. So, if we must find a solution to climate change, we must find a way to transition from our poor farming practices. That's why we champion regenerative agriculture. It's a farming practices that actually mitigate the release of more carbon to the atmosphere and build farmers' resilience to climate change. How can we do agriculture in a way that mitigates climate change? One, we talk about minimizing tillage.
Okay.
To
not overtill the soil.
Overtill the soil. You know, carbon is also stored in the soil. Okay. So the more we till, the more we expose the soil into more carbon into the atmosphere. Then we must also find ways to limit our shifting cultivation behaviors. You know, in the past, our parents used to do more of shifting cultivation, you know, moving from one piece of land. When this land becomes less fertile, they move to another piece of land and to cut forest and just cut forest and just cut forest. So we must stop that. That's why we are coming out with organic liquid fertilizer, where farmers don't need to go for cutting a new piece of land because they want increase.
And let's now shift away from the inhabitants. You mentioned they should plant more trees, they should use more solar energy, they should not overtill the soil, they should not use inorganic synthetic fertilizers that harm the soil. They should I think that's some of the things you mentioned. Correct. Now I'm sure, dear viewers, you must have grabbed the message. Don't cut forests, plant more trees instead. Do not overtill the soil. Do not use synthetic fertilizers, rather go for organic fertilizers. Do not do much of shifting cultivation. Perfect. And things like that. Now let's move over to NGOs and civil societies. What is the role of civil societies in such situations? You work in a civil society, you're a co-founder of Inquire for Change Solutions. Aside from regenerative agriculture, we've seen you also working within the mangrove area to protect mangroves so as to also fight climate change. What is the role of civil society from your own perspective that they can chip in to also join the fight against climate change?
Yeah, thank you very much. Last year, when COVID came, the world was talking a lot about COVID. I wish we could be talking about climate change just like we've been talking about COVID. Now everybody was concerned about COVID. So climate is a global problem. So if all of us can start talking about it, I think first is going to help increase the consciousness of people about the changing climate. So civil society have a role to play first when it comes to education. We must spread the word about the changing climate so that even the common mother on the street, in the village, should understand that there's a changing climate, and everybody have a role to play in solving this change in climate. Spread the word, educate people about climate change. We've been working a lot in promoting the conservation and preservation of mangrove along the west coast of Cameroon. Mangrove is a major ecosystem that absorb more carbon than any other ecosystem in the world. And that's why we've been seeing us focusing more of our energy in protecting and restoring the mangrove along the west coast of Cameroon. So civil society can join effort in preserving our forests and helping people to find more creative ways in doing their farming to mitigate the shifting cultivation practices and deforestation that is going on around the Mount Cameroon. I think these are some of the little actions that we can take to, as young people, of course, youth-led organizations, we have the energy and the innovation. Let's find creative ways to find solutions to climate change, and that is it.
The last but not the least, to government authorities who may be watching us right now, because we exist within a state, and at some point the state kind of has some degree of final say, and can push us forward towards fighting for climate change. Mr. Henry, we talked last time about the role of the government in adapting to climate change. Now, what is the role of the government in mitigating climate change and fighting it for real?
Yeah, when it comes to forest, the government owns the forest, and they have the power to be able to mitigate deforestation. So they must put in place policies that helps mitigate climate change. Like, for instance, companies come to sign contract to do logging and all those stuffs. If the government doesn't regulate that, a common man on the street cannot regulate that. So the government has a role to play in mitigating how companies go about logging so that they can minimize deforestation. That's the role of the government. The government also have the power to come up with policies that will enable the country to not just better prepare to adapt to climate change, but as well mitigate climate change. The government can decide that, okay, look at an area like Marawa where there's a lot of sun. The government can decide to invest in tapping solar energy for the population. That is the role the government can play in mitigating climate change. So it's a work together with both the government and the entire community.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Henry. Mr. Henry Kembetek Kwa says it's a coalition, a collaboration between inhabitants, local authorities, civil society, and state and government authorities. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, we're still right here on the program Nature's Corner right here behind television. And since 3 p.m., we have been trashing the issue of the climate crisis. There is a crisis which is falling on us all. It is a climate crisis affecting nations across the globe, with hundreds and thousands of persons dying in different regions of the globe, many persons being displaced, properties damaged. And today on the program Nature's Corner, we have been unveiling some of the causes of these disasters and how climate change contributes to them, and what we can do as a people to also fight this climate change and of course adapt to these disasters when they happen. Mr. Henry has talked quite a lot on this issue. We're going to jingle break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. Conservation conversation right here on the program Nature's Corner, where whenever we come, we try to educate you about environmental issues. And of course, just as I always tell you, dear viewers, when we talk about the environment is not far from you. It is not a far-fetched idea. It is not distant. It does not concern only a particular group of persons. The environment is where you build your house. The environment is where you go to work. The environment is where your children go to school. The environment is where you wash your dresses. The environment is the river beside you. The environment is where you dump your gutters. Every space around us is the environment, and if we don't protect it, it may come to haunt us back, because as a popular quote does say, nature can exist without humans, but humans cannot exist